The last thing that I think we definitely need to touch on, we have about 5 minutes left, is the red shirt protests. What was going on there? We were both in Thailand during the red shirts protests. You might have seen a little bit about it on the news. Um, but just, I guess, to oversimplify it, um, the red shirts happened in 2010 between March and May. They were sort of on and off protesting. And it was led by the actual name of the red shirts is the National United Front of Democracy Against Dictatorship, which is a mouthful. I think red shirts is a lot easier to say. Um, and they were fighting basically in protest of the government led by Prime Minister Abhisit, which they believe had taken power illegitimately and through a silent coup, forming a coalition, sort of behind the scenes. And they are supporters of Thaksin Shinawatra, who was actually ousted from Thailand. And his bank accounts were frozen. And the followers of Thaksin, the red shirts, come from sort of the poor northeast region. Actually, Sarah, you spent more time in Isan than I did. That's where a lot of the poor rural farmers are. And I think there's a lot of complicated reasons why the protests happen, but a lot of it is just about a group of people who felt like they were being ignored. And there's a lot more going on there. Maybe somebody who has insight can provide some to us. But I know that before the red shirts protests happened, I talked to some cab drivers who affiliated themselves with the red shirts and were proud to call themselves red shirts. And the protests turned into something uglier than what was originally intended. A lot of the malls burned down. Bangkok was in chaos for a while. It was dangerous for a little bit. A lot, not probably not as bad as it was painted on the news, but um, it definitely a really interesting um, and complicated problem that I don't think is over yet. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Sarah. But
I think, well, first of all, for a country that is so not against, but almost afraid of like nonconformity. You know, they all agree with each other about everything, and then this uprising was almost this like amazing opportunity for these people to speak out and defend themselves. And I just think it did get. I think in the beginning it started off as more of a party and a parade. You know, if you remember in Bangkok,
yeah.
like they were
Mm-hmm.
running around with clappers, playing music and smiling and cheering, and it was happy, you know, and they took up space and they
Yeah.
were loud and there, but they were so friendly and, you know, like we could walk through them and it was great. And then I think it was
Mm-hmm.
when they were ignored and shut down, that's when it became really pretty bad. But,
Yeah.
you know, and
I think
it's
it
definitely not
started as
over
like a
because
family
those,
affair.
mm-hmm,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. No, I think it's definitely not over. I think those sentiments are still very much alive, and it will come back with full force probably.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what happens. Also, the king, like I mentioned, is 84, 83. He's getting up there. And I know that in the past, he's been known to be sort of a voice of peace. He quelled a couple rebellions a few decades ago, but he's been in the hospital. So during the red shirts, he was not able to contribute anything. And Thailand is in a state of sort of tenuous um, balance right now, but there's also the question of succession, who's going to come after this king. And that in itself is a whole can of worms that we're not going to get into, but is definitely a point of contention in Thailand as well. So before we go, we have one more question from Katie. Let's take this question. Since you traveled a lot on weekends, did it take you long to feel at home in your community? I'm assuming that's what that means. And Sarah and I actually lived in the same community together, so maybe we both have some answers to that.
With
Actually,
Katie.
Sarah, why don't you go first? You take this question.
Well, we actually shout out to Katie. We actually lived with Katie for a good portion of this time.
Of course.
But I think I think in the beginning it was hard because there was this conflicting feeling of wanting to feel at home and also wanting to explore this new place. And I think it really wasn't until like 5 or 6 months in before. I mean, I definitely always felt at home, but it wasn't until like 5 or 6 months in when um, we just met more people. We started reaching out to the community more and having more like family dinners with the other departments and just getting more involved. And we definitely felt much more at home. And I think we stayed in our town quite often towards the end, which
Hmm.
was really, really nice.
Um, yeah, I would agree with that. I think part of the reason why I wanted to live there was so that I would feel at home in my community. We lived in a province called Chonburi, which is east of Bangkok and very different. Also, the town we lived in was an industrial town. So, for those of you who have sort of a romanticized image of Thailand being, you know, beautiful green mountains with temples and paradise like beaches like you would see in Phuket. There is that aspect, but where we lived was industrial. There's a lot of industry there. The world is thrown into industry now, and that's the reality of a lot of beautiful places like Thailand. So a lot of the people that we knew and worked with were actually factory workers. So yeah, it took us a while, I think, just to get adjusted to the lifestyle there. And even though we traveled on weekends, most of our week was spent, at school with our kids, with the people in the community, just going out at our local elephant bar. We called it that because an elephant used to pass through, you know, Thai times. What can I say? Um, but yeah, I mean that's a great question to end on actually because it just leaves me feeling nostalgic.
I really wish we could go to
um,
Elephant Bar
but
now.
I know. Well, anyway, thank you everybody who tuned in. Um, this was so much fun. This was a really big treat for both of us since we both lived there. My next event is on Australia, and I didn't live there, so it's going to be a lot more of me taking a back seat and asking questions. But I encourage you to watch that as well. And thank you so much, Sarah, for agreeing to do this. She's across the
Thanks,
country from
Roche.
me, so this took some fun coordinating on both of our parts. And I hope you all enjoyed this or found it informative. And if you're interested, just click on my name and you can follow me and watch the next event. If you have any feedback, please let me know. And I hope you're all doing well. Have a good day.